Jackie and Judd are back.
You're about to make a whole lot of people around here real happy.
Live from the TCL broadcast studios on 1500 ESPN.
It's just been, like I told you, like an emotional roller coaster. I'm not 100% sure. And like I said, I want to make sure I have some time just to take a deep breath and really be behind that decision. But like I said, I couldn't have asked for a better last day of the 2018 season. And I'm looking forward to just taking a breath and spending some time with my girls and, my family. And, we'll go from there. But like I said, with emotions running right now, I don't want to say either way.
All right, Wetmore's in here. There's no way you can come back.
Yeah,
right?
Joe.
There's no way you can come back.
You didn't have to say either way. It was said for you yesterday. I think we all kind of know which way this is headed. Great party, awesome celebration. One of the most memorable days, I told Judd yesterday, one of the most memorable days at Target Field in its history. It's a short history, but still in its history.
Yeah.
You don't get to come back after that. You can't say, maybe 2 more years.
You know what?
No, dude. That's it.
Judd, were you at, this person shall go nameless, but were you at, like, a handful of years ago, a going away party for someone that was held at a local establishment in St. Paul where they raised money to move to a different state and had a live band, and it was like goodbye to this person and wow, this is a great send-off? Came back 6 weeks later after like taking everyone's donation money and going. That's what it would feel like.
No, I missed that, but that would be very much like this.
I'll tell you who it is later.
I told Judd, if you ever want someone to retire, somebody you work with, and you're just like, I don't know, this is the way to do it. You get them a cake, you give them a big send-off. You say, this has been so great, aren't you? This is
Catcher's
awesome.
gear, yeah.
I have a Joe Mauer day at Target Field, and that's your way to say, thanks for the memories.
I said this is a perfect scenario where something very special and emotional meets sort of a cynical point of view from this end. Yesterday was perfect. Like everything about it.
Yeah.
When he came out of the dugout in catcher's gear, I didn't cry, but I welled up. It's like, oh my goodness, this is great. And yet I know full well that was a slap on the back and you're basically done here. Like if you come back, we're going to be not happy about it. So it's this cynical. Well, I think the on-field staff wants him back, but I believe the people that run this franchise baseball ops department probably would like to move on in some ways. But anyway, my point being is there is room to be like, that was a fantastic sports moment that you're not going to forget. Combined with, I think you're done.
That's right. Hey, I thought about it this way yesterday, Phil, that if you're on the fence at all, let's say it's 50-50 coming into the weekend. Doesn't this make it pretty hard for Joe? From Joe's perspective, forget about the Twins for a second, but from Joe's perspective, as you start to get momentum on the side of, my body feels okay, and I still got this drive to win, and maybe 2 more years with the Twins. Doesn't this pull hard against that line of thinking, pull you really hard in the other direction, as you start to build momentum on the side of the fence that says, there's a little more in the tank.
Well,
yeah, but are you ever going to get a goodbye like that again? I don't think so.
The only thing, if I'm Joe Mauer, and it's a big thing, the only thing that I would be jonesing to accomplish is win a championship, right?
Yep.
So let's say it's early October and the fall air is crisp and you've got dramatic baseball games on here on a daily basis starting out, and you can find most of them cheap. Plug on 1500 ESPN, right? You're home for the baseball playoffs. Just keep watching these postseason games because you'll get a better idea at the end of October how far away the Twins are from winning a World Series, especially on the pitching front still. And they only have about 2 position players you would say are a lock to be back, maybe even like 1.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played in a few weeks because he's been injured, Eddie Rosario. But I just like if the only thing on your checklist is win a World Series, I don't look at this roster if I'm Joe and say, man, if I just come back, we're right on the cusp of winning. I think they're going to be competitive and they might even make the playoffs next year. Yeah. But like you need about 3 Josh Haders before you can have a chance to.
Manny snake in the weeds coming in here.
Yeah.
Look, so I hear what you're saying, and no, the pieces aren't all in place, but I do look at this as a bit of a blank slate that if I'm Joe Mauer, I might go to them and say, hey, Thad, Derek, listen, this is a great Thank you. Thanks so much for the send off. I'm thinking 2 more years, but I want to see what your vision is.
I could live with one.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like, hey, you can take all the options you want. That's fine. Teams love that these days. But I could see, this is my hot take of the winter, and I'm sticking by it all winter. You guys might roast me for it. I think the Twins are a playoff team next year. I think that the Twins have a number of pieces internally that are encouraging. I certainly have got the pieces that are discouraging.
Hold on.
Hot Take Cops is recorded on location with the men and women of sports talk. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in Hot Take Court.
Wetmore, we may have to search your vehicle, not just pull you over.
Listen,
I think he's got pot for sure. There's weed in that car, right below the spare tire.
I'm going to need an attorney. I'm not saying another word. I'd like my attorney present. I will remind you, gentlemen, that you also played that Hot Take Police song for me on May 1st when I came into your studio and told you that the Twins weren't going to the playoffs. And you said...
That's right. And Wetmore and I were in lockstep on that, and Judd disagreed.
I hate this, that Phil makes that joke, and half the people get it, and half the people are like, oh, good for Phil. He was right.
Yep.
He was right. Yeah.
We're just going to let it go from now on.
Here's my point. As my attorney would tell you, if they were present right now, that a lot of things would have to go right for that to happen, but it's absolutely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Also, there's not that many viable teams in the American League. So, like, if the A's just go back to being mediocre, all of a sudden now there's an extra wild card spot.
I don't know. I mean, I still look at Cleveland as the team to beat in the Central. That wild card race is going to be stuffy next year too. It's tough. The American League right now is the haves and the have-nots. The Twins, despite battling valiantly for the last month of the season, are the have-nots. Mm-hmm. It's very clear. But they are the rare have-not that is going to have a basically blank template and tons of spending capital if they want to go out in free agency and make this team better. I think that could play into the math. If you're Joe Mauer, you might say, hey, what if I'm back and I'm on a cheap 1 or 2 year deal or whatever, where's my play? What does this look like? Am I a platoon guy, first base? Who else are you going to get? Because I think I'm 100% with you, Phil, that if there's one thing left for Joe Mauer to accomplish after that beautiful send-off that should be goodbye, if that's not goodbye, it will be because he wants to win a World Series and, speculation, he wants to win it in Minnesota. That would be the only thing pulling him back in my mind.
Which is really sweet and nice, but I think that 2018 is going to be the year of the unspoken choice with Joe. And the choice was, do you want to go out like you did on Sunday, which is awesome, or do you want to come to us and tell us, you know what, the Yankees could really use me, and they're good, and they'll trade for me, so you get a crappy southpaw relief pitcher for me, and I get my chance. I think if you've been by the ring completely.
You're saying that he would have gone to New York a month ago.
Yes, exactly right. I don't think he gets the choice of, I want to come back and chase a ring here. I think that's almost one step too much.
Yeah.
So I think 2018 for Joe, in typical Joe fashion, was the unspoken choice of, what do you want? Because they gave him a great setup.
Yeah. Let's take one more call on this subject. Joe Mauer and the great send off and the reaction yesterday, and also it's a bit of a complicated relationship between Joe and fans, which I think at times the criticism has been warranted, especially the first base portion of his career, but the criticism when he was a catcher was always so over the top and absurd. But 651-646-8255. Jerry and Egan, you're on the show. Jerry, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up a couple of points here. I believe Kent Hrbek both began and ended his career at Major Strike. I think he started in 81 when they had the 2 different seasons. And if you remember, I think that's the draft where Joe Mauer, where the Twins were really debating whether to take that Mark Pryor. You know, maybe you guys can say what he actually did, but I think that's the one that we were really heavily debating.
Actually, you know what, Jerry, thanks for the call. The Mark Pryor thing, obviously Joe Mauer had the better career, and like only one of them is being considered for Hall of Fame, but you could make a case that with how good the Twins were between 2002 and 2006, that if they had Mark Pryor and Johan Santana, that they actually would have had a better chance to win a World Series in that short time span that Mark Pryor was relevant.
If they would have had Mark Pryor for 15 games a year, they might have been a better club for a couple of those
Phil
years.
Mackey, I love Joe, but it was a bad draft choice.
No, I'm just saying,
Get the hot take police back on the horn, Phil. Call yourself.
In 2003, Mark Pryor was one of the best pitchers in baseball.
My attorney will be happy to represent you when they arrive on my behalf in about 20 minutes.
Would you have won the World Series in one of those 2 years that Mark Pryor was healthy?
And think about
just throwing
this.
it out there.
Think about this. Let's go a step further.
Manny, anything you say can and will.
Manny,
Oh, yeah,
shut
I'm
their
already
mics off.
prepared.
It's just you and me right now.
Think about this. The Twins take Mark Pryor, number 1 overall. The Cubs take Joe Mauer, number 2, right? Mm-hmm. Joe Mauer doesn't win a World Series with the Cubs, signs with the Twins as soon as he's eligible for free agency.
Wow. Yeah, wow. So you might,
And they just get the back half of his career. Yeah, that first base half.
Does Pryor's arm still come off or no? Does Pryor's arm then, because it didn't, Dusty abuse him?
Ron Gardenhire never would have allowed him to go past 93 pitches and
That was
6
Dusty,
2/3.
right?
Dusty Baker was like, October, you've already thrown 290 innings or whatever it is.
Mark Pryor would not have been a valid stand-in for Brad Radke, so I don't know that he would have had a place in this town.
Can you stick for one more segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
Wetmore here. We're maybe wrapping up the end of Joe Mauer's 15-year career. Mackie and Judd.
Live from the TCL broadcast studios.
Please keep working during the following announcement.
Mackie and Judd are back on 1500 ESPN.
Now, let me ask you guys this. And Wetmore's going to have a different answer because he's the youngest of the bunch here. Not to be an ageist, but how many Twins players...
Go right ahead. I won't sue you.
Okay, good.
I'm not going to HR, but I won't sue you.
Good. How many Twins players can you definitively say are ahead of Joe Mauer in terms of historical clout?
Well, one jumps to mind because he won
Puckett.
2 World Series.
Kirby Puckett has to be. Yeah.
It depends on your view of guys like Rod Carew, Tony Oliva for different reasons, Harmon Killebrew. That's where the list stops for me.
My top 3 Twins would be Puck, Killer, who I didn't see play, Carew. And after that, Oliva, I don't know that. Like,
Oliva and
I
Mauer
might say
very-
that, but I don't know that.
Aren't Oliva and Mauer very similar, though?
They probably are.
Batting title guys, young prodigies.
Hurt.
And then by the time they were 30, 31 years old, you were just left wanting more of what they gave you in their 20s because of injuries.
I didn't see any of these guys play, but I know that I think of Mauer more as a Rod Carew. Get on base, bat to ball skills, phenomenal.
Apple Field. Yes, sir.
Tony Oliva is this wonderful hitter whose career was cut short by injuries. In fact, it would have been cut even shorter if not for the advent of the DH in the American League. That, to me, mirrors Mauer's career in a similar way, that he had to move out from behind the plate, which was a lot of his value. I said this to you guys in April when Mauer was racking up his 2000th hit, that if that was just it, if Mauer had the concussion in 2013 against the Mets, took the foul tip off the mask, and that was the end of his career, sorry, see ya, tough luck, Joe Mauer's a Hall of Famer. Now, 5 years of playing first base, he's like a league average hitter, which at first base looks pretty bad. Joe Mauer, for the last 5 years, he's had some tough years, but overall, he's been like a good player. Not a fantastic player, not a franchise, not a generational player, but that 5 years is definitely going to weigh on his candidacy because now you're comparing him up against other first basemen who are awesome in this generation. I think that the Oliva comparison is interesting. Carew is more the type of player he's been, but my point is just that that's the company this guy keeps. That is, he's going to have the number 7 up in the limestone out in left field between the 2 bar decks soon.
He's going to get a gate and a statue as well.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
He's getting the hat trick.
That's the kind of player that he is and has been.
And I'll say this too, and I said this to Judd last hour, the first base thing, he got robbed out of the Gold Glove last year.
Yes,
he should have been the Gold Glove.
He wasn't even a finalist,
and
he
first
should have won
baseman
it
last year. And if you add that, you win a Gold Glove at first base. Had a good offensive season last year. I mean,
yeah,
multiple position Gold Gloves and then 3 batting titles at catcher. Yeah, Now, here's what's ridiculous, though. Like, we all know he was the best fielding first baseman in the league, but because a bunch of idiots voted incorrectly and gave it to Eric Hosmer, he doesn't get in the Hall of Fame. Like, if that's the thing that prevents him from getting in, I mean, come on.
Do you guys think, though, if the ballots were still just with the old school guard, I would say that the time at first base hurts him. But with the way that baseball is perceived now and seen now, and I think you get a lot more people that actually go with what happened as opposed to perception. Don't you think the new guard that votes is going to say 10 years? I think he hit 323 as a catcher.
Yeah.
They're going to say this guy flat out, forget the first base time. This guy flat out is a Hall of Fame catcher.
Yeah, I think
That could be.
I think newer thinking in voting and just among baseball media, it lessens the importance of RBIs and runs scored, because a lot of those, they're a product of chance, where you're at in the lineup. Obviously, if you hit more home runs, you're going to drive in more runs. But if you look at run production and what matters most in terms of generating runs, the ability to get on base is the most important aspect in baseball. The ability to set the table and get on base. And a lot of times those are unheralded. If you're not batting leadoff and stealing bases and putting up gaudy fantasy counting numbers like Ricky Henderson did, sometimes the ability to set the table is underappreciated. And that's the story of Joe Mauer's 15 years.
Yeah, underappreciated is a great word for it. I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts, because I heard you kind of shadowboxing on the Mauer haters and all that kind of stuff. That's all that exists on Twitter until really this season. I think there have been a lot of people who are speaking up and saying, no, I appreciate Joe Mauer. I hate that it's such a negative connotation anytime his name is brought up. But I'm talking zoom out, look at every single Twins fan in the world, and you're polling them. What do you think the percentage is of, there are not really any lukewarm Joe Mauer people. He's sort of the lightning rod of the franchise. You're either like, wow, respect, or boo, you made too much money. Mm-hmm. What do you think the percentage is, and I'll ask all three of you, of people who actually appreciate and really cheered for Joe Mauer through the ups and downs?
So
what's that percent?
If it's just a black and white pie chart,
yes or no?
I would say it's probably 25 to 30% minimum who think that he was an overpaid fraud and bad leader because he didn't, shout at teammates. I think it's a pretty high. I think 25 to 30% is a pretty high percentage.
And the problem is, though, that those folks are sheep. They were told that. Sure. And they grew to believe it.
And they say it the loudest.
Yes.
They're the ones who talk the loudest. And I think that's why it seems like there were so many people that felt that way about Joe, because those were the ones that always said it the loudest. And like people that looked at Joe the way like the four of us do, we were more the silent ones, because it was just common knowledge that this guy is really good.
Mike Trout's a good player. Okay, I get tired of saying that day after day.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I'm not saying Joe Mauer's Mike Trout, but my point is just that I've rethought that over the last couple of months. That, man, I used to think this guy was just hated, vilified, because I spent too much time on Twitter. Let's be honest. I think we probably all spend too much time on Twitter, but I just hear too much from Twins fans that despise him for that reason. And anytime I'd write anything, like I wrote what I thought was a pretty non-controversial column in April that Joe Mauer, even before 2,000 hits, had earned his place among that sort of Twins Mount Rushmore. He's already one of the Twins greats. And now 2,000 hits is nice, and chasing Harmon Killebrew in this on base, that's nice. That's all great. Feathers in his cap, but he didn't need that to be in that group. And you hear just the negativity on Twitter. So anyways, I was rethinking this the other day. And the more I think about it, the friends and baseball followers, family, whatever, that I have that aren't necessarily on Twitter and aren't necessarily jumping in with hot sports takes, it's more like 80+% that really, truly like Joe Mauer and cheer for him. And to Manny's point, the people you hear from so much more often are that. But I think I've been heartened by rethinking that split is a lot closer to truly appreciating Joe Mauer for what he gave rather than hating on him for what he was not.
And Derek, I told Phil that the guy that we saw talk yesterday, if he had shown that, and I think the most important thing is this, and it's stuff that in retrospect now is not huge, but you know what? In this town, we pile on a lot.
Sure.
And if the Twins had come out in 13 or 14, whatever year the bilateral leg weakness explanation was, and Joe had said, back off, back the bleep off. It's a terrible explanation. It's not what's wrong. I got bad knees, okay? So just back down. I think a lot of the people that you're talking about that didn't like him would have been like, oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
Sure.
But instead, but the narrative of Joe was driven by some very powerful people in this town. And Joe didn't defend himself. And so you had that faction of people are all like, yeah, let's pick on Joe. And if Joe had come out and said, no, that's an awful explanation. It's not what's wrong. What's wrong is I got bad knees, okay?
Yeah. And sometimes, and what's funny is, I think ultimately as an athlete, you shouldn't care what people think. Really, you should just go and do your thing and live your life. And almost to a fault, he did not care what people thought.
Yeah.
He did not care that he was getting filleted for multiple years, and that
this was the first year that he said anything to that end, that he did care. And it's almost like, wow, it got to this point before I finally just asked him in spring training. Somebody asked him about the negativity or something, and I said, he answered a question. He said, yeah, people are going to have their opinions and they're going to think what they want. I said, Joe, does that bug you? And he's like surprised by the question. He's like, yeah, a little bit, because I know the work I do behind the scenes and all that stuff's true. The prep that it takes to just get his body ready for a game. And he's not lying about that.
But people hear that and they think, well, why does it take him longer to get ready for a game than other old athletes? Why does Albert Pujols need to take forever to get ready for a game? And the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, sure. I don't know the answer. My point is just that he's been bulletproof's the wrong word, but that he's been almost immune to criticism, not knowing that he's been this person who's just constantly poked fun at because he's an easy target. But it was interesting to see that human side the other day and Judd. You saw, just kind of.
It was great.
He broke down at least 3 different times throughout the day, and I thought it was fantastic. That's why I think it's going to, honestly, if there's any doubt in your mind as a Twins fan whether he's coming back or not, Sunday should have answered that. And if you're Joe Mauer and there's still doubt in your mind, I think you got to consider long and hard that you're not getting a goodbye like that again. Derek Jeter got the tour, the goodbye in every city, but for Joe Mauer, considering how much he does not want that spotlight, Sunday was perfect in every single way possible.
Yeah. What can people find right now on the website and on the Touch 'Em All feed?
We got a Touch 'Em All podcast with Judd and I just reacting our sort of cynical take, but how wonderful a sports day it was. One of the highlights at Target Field for sure. And then I got a column on why this has to be goodbye for Joe Mauer. That's on the website right now, Judd. I know you got a couple of pieces up there too.
Cool. All right.
Outstanding.
Good stuff, Derek.
Thanks,
They're really
guys.
good.
All right.
Bye, Derek.
So good.
They're awesome reads. I'm not even going to
good.
tease them.
Baseball.
That'd be cool, man. I'd like to see that again.
You can find Matthew Collar on 1500ESPN.com, the Purple Podcast, and also now Saturday Sports Talk.
Yes,
You
10
guys,
to noon with me. Lots of fun, Matthew. Lots of fun.
So much fun.
I don't need to defend my work. Back off, everybody. Respect me.
Assume the position.
More Mackey and Judd coming up next on 1500 ESPN.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. TCL launched a new lineup of award-winning 4K Roku TVs to deliver the best sports, movies, TV shows, and thousands of streaming channels. TCL's personalized home screen makes it easy to customize your TCL to fit the way you watch. Binge watch what you want, when you want. TCL delivers excellent picture quality, sleek design, and stunning resolution at an affordable price. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand, is available at major retailers everywhere. Learn more at TCLUSA.com.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. The FBI investigation of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh may wrap up today, we're told. But Christine Blasey Ford, who accuses him of sexual assault, apparently has not been interviewed, nor has he. Does that worry key Republican Senator Jeff Flake?
Well, we have the statement of Dr. Ford, and then we have hours of testimony. So, frankly, when we talked about an FBI investigation, it was to follow up leads that might corroborate her account. So I'm not troubled by that.
Standing next to Senator Flake on Capitol Hill, his friend, Democratic Senator Chris Coons, for whom the speed of the investigation raises questions.
That would concern me. I hope the FBI has been allowed to follow all the reasonable leads from the credible allegations that were before the committee last week. And I know that puts them under a lot of pressure, but they've got the resources to do it.
He and Senator Flake were on the Today Show this morning. I'm Rita Foley.